The tragedy of slave trade in Africa. The tragedy began not with a single date, but with a widening economic hunger that spread across the Atlantic. While systems of servitude had long existed globally, the transatlantic slave trade, which began in the early 16th century, around 1525, was uniquely brutal. It was defined by its industrial scale, its categorization of humans as property, and its foundation in racial hierarchy. It became the largest forced migration in all of human history. The narrative of suffering started far inland, in the villages and kingdoms of West and Central Africa. The demand for labor on New World plantations, fueled by European powers like Portugal, Spain, Britain, and France, created an insatiable market. This demand led to perpetual warfare. African groups raided their neighbors, seizing captives to sell to coastal traders. This initial journey, a forced march of hundreds of miles, was known as the Death March. Captives, chained together, endured starvation, exposure, and constant violence. Those who could not keep pace were abandoned or murdered. Even the powerful Kingdom of Congo, once a thriving African state, was destabilized. Its own leaders became tragically entangled in supplying slaves in exchange for European goods. This phase exposed the heartbreaking involvement of wealthy African merchants and local chiefs who partnered with European factors to deliver their own people to the coast. Upon reaching the coast, survivors were imprisoned in massive, fortress-like slave castles, such as Gorée Island in Senegal or Elmina in Ghana. Here, thousands were packed into dark, airless dungeons for months, waiting for ships. This brutal wait stripped them of their names, their dignity, and their hope. It was here, passing through the infamous door of no return, that they left the African continent forever. The voyage across the Atlantic, known as the Middle Passage, was the trade's most concentrated act of horror. Lasting between 60 and 90 days, the conditions defied human endurance. Africans were crammed below deck, chained in rows, often with less space than a man in a coffin. Disease, particularly dysentery and smallpox, spread rapidly. Resistance was constant. Many chose to starve themselves or leap overboard, preferring a quick death to the unknown future. The crew employed specialized tools of torture, including whips, thumbscrews, and iron muzzles, to enforce compliance. An estimated 1.5 to 2 million people, out of the roughly 12.5 million who were loaded onto ships between the 16th and 19th centuries, died on this voyage alone. The trade reached its terrifying peak in the 17th and 18th centuries, powering the global economy. This systematic brutality was sanctioned by high figures and wealthy entities. European crowns, including King George III of Great Britain and the Portuguese monarchy, directly benefited. They taxed the trade and guaranteed monopolies to powerful charter companies like the Royal African Company. Financiers and merchants in cities like Liverpool, Bristol, and Nantes amassed colossal fortunes. Men like Stephen Fuller, a major plantation owner and lobbyist, vigorously defended the system in British Parliament, ensuring its continuation for decades. Finally, plantation owners, figures like the Codrington family, who owned vast sugar estates in the Caribbean, relied solely on the trade. Their wealth was built on the calculated cruelty of overwork and underfeeding to maximize output. The suffering of Africans, the relentless labor, the casual violence, the separation of families at auction blocks, and the constant threat of the whip, fueled the Age of Enlightenment in Europe and the founding of the American Republic. The story of the slave trade is not just a tale of ships and chains. It is a fundamental, tragic narrative of modern capitalism built on stolen lives. The official abolition of slavery took place decades later, a protracted struggle that did not truly end until the 1860s, specifically 1863 in the U.S. and 1866 in Cuba. However, the economic and social trauma persists today. The echoes of the ship holds remain, a permanent scar on human history.